Good afternoon, everyone. This is State Representative Brad Halbrook coming to you from Central Illinois. It's kind of a rainy day in Central Illinois and across most of the state. And today we are talking HR 102, resolution to create a new state of Illinois. And so you've seen the emails and the texts and the Facebook postings about today and what we're planning to talk about. I have the honor to be joined by two guests that have been leading the effort in California from New California. I'm joined with Paul Preston and Liz Ritchie today, and they're going to kind of help us understand this process, what's in the Constitution, how it works, and then at the end, as we close, we'll talk about the hearing that hopefully will be tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock to hear HR 102 again, and some things we'd like for you to do to prepare for that. So at this time, I'm going to introduce Paul Preston from New California and his associate, Liz Ritchie. Paul and Liz, the floor is yours for an introduction.
Sure. My name is Paul Preston, and I'm the president and founder of the New California State Movement. We started the movement really about 15 years ago, and it really gained a lot of speed and momentum up around 5 years ago. And we actually declared independence following the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the Bill of Rights in the process and procedure of the state split, which is provided for in Article 4, Section 3 of the Constitution. And since this was January 15th, 2018, and since then we've had 7 constitutional conventions. We've formed ourselves a government. We've passed resolutions, and we're taking real deliberate action to become a new state. We're right in the middle of the process. Well, actually, towards the end of the process for state to the state approval, and then we're going to be moving on to Congress. But that's where we're at right now, and I'll turn it over to Liz. She can do a quick introduction, and I'll get into the content of Article 4, Section 3 of the Constitution, and also Reynolds versus Sims.
Well, hello, I'm Liz Ritchie. I work as the Chief of Staff for Paul's organization, and particularly working with, we have 56 counties identified out of our 58 as being part of New California State. And we are basically doing a very similar reverse from what your resolution is asking for, which is that Chicago would be recognized as its own state. We're looking at removing the very dense populations of urbanized areas from New California and creating New California State for the rural and suburb areas of California. So we are, I've been with the organization for 3 years, working in an administrative capacity, helping to build relationships and organization protocols for the New California State. And I'm also the senator for my county. I'm in Contra Costa County, as well as the chair for my county committee. So I've been invested in this organization. I'm 100% excited about what we've gotten accomplished and where we're going. It's going to happen, and it has to happen because we need to stop this totalitarian maneuvering to try and take over our state. So that's what my background is a little bit with New California.
All right. Thank you, Paul and Liz. And again, this part that we want to discuss, Paul, is provided for us in the U.S. Constitution, Article 4, Section 3. We've been talking about that a lot. Paul, just expand upon that and tell us, explain to our viewers a little more your view on the Article 4, Section 3 in the U.S. Constitution.
Well, Article 4, Section 3 of the Constitution was placed in the Constitution around 1788, 89. As a way to provide the formation of a new state from a pre-existing state or from pre-existing states. So you could take parts of pre-existing states and put them together to make a whole state. That we understand that law was actually, or that constitutional the Article 4 constitutional section was put in there primarily to stop the formation of a malfunctioning state. And what I mean by that the founding fathers knew that something might go awry in a given state. There might be financial collapse, there might be civil war, there might be strife, there might be a lot of different things. And it's a way in which the citizens can come together to break away from a pre-existing state and form their own state and govern as they would see fit. As an example, in the case of if they wanted to form their own state to, because of educational reasons or whatever, to make it better for their own people, they could do so. The article is very, very specific. It's an article that says that if you do want to form a state from a pre-existing state, then what you have to do is you have to get the permission of the legislature or legislatures concerned, and then that of the Congress. And this is a process where it does not involve the governor. It's the process where it does not involve the judiciary. It's only a legislative process. And the threshold for getting approval of the state is a simple resolution in each body of your bicameral legislature. So if you have a assembly, or we have an assembly out here in the House of Representatives, or a Senate, you just really have to pass a simple resolution with no majority rules, just simple majority rules. So no quorum or calls are necessary. It's a very easy process. The founding fathers wanted to make it easy on people to form a new state, because they felt that sometimes the people would have to have relief from an overbearing state or a totalitarian type of malfunction in the state, like what we have out here in California. The other part of it is that you would go on for approval by the Congress. So it's a two-step process. You have a process where the state gives the approval, and then you have a process where the Congress gives approval, and that's what starts your statehood process right there. When the Congress says yes, there's an enabling process that bill that's passed, and then you start to write your own constitution, or you have your constitution verified by the Congress, and then you become a state and move on to statehood. This is a process that's only been done 3 times in our history. All the other times have usually there's been introduction of a bill, like in the state of California. When California was created, it was created by a bill introduction in 1850. And the other process by which most states came into being was, of course, through territorial means and jurisdictions. And right now, Puerto Rico, as an example, is a territory. And of course, you have DC, Washington, DC, which is not a state, but it happens to be housing the capital of the United States. So it's not a state, but it does have all the things that a state would have, except for the senators, which makes a lot of sense. You can't have the conflict of interest of a state capital or a state holding and being the U.S. capital being on the property of a state. It's just a conflict of interest, and there's a lot of constitutional problems with that. So we are following that to the T. We're following what happened in West Virginia in 1861. So this is the first time this has ever been done since 1861. And we're following exactly the process that is involved by forming county committees, getting county support, and then working with the legislature concerned. And right now we are working with the legislature concerned. Ultimately, we're going to submit a resolution to the legislature to get the legislature to approve us moving on to Congress. The second big part of this, that's a bigger part, is why one of the main reasons why we're doing this is we have lack of representation, and so does your state. You have complete lack of representation in the rural areas, and this all started really as a recognition in the Connecticut Compromise at the Constitutional Convention, when they realized that when they formed the 3 bodies of government, when they formed the legislature and the executive branch and then that of the judiciary, they gave them all co-equal powers. And so that everyone was power sharing, but it was equal power each one of them had. They created a legislature that initially was just a House of Representatives. So they gave representatives based upon population to all the states. And after a while, some of the states that only had a small population, or maybe only had 2 or 3 members of the House of Representatives, pushed back and said, if we introduce legislation, what's to stop New York, which has, maybe 50 members of the House of Representatives, and say Vermont, which only has 2? How can Vermont possibly get anything done? So they came together and said, well, there is something called states' rights. And they decided that what they would do is give each state 2 senators and form another body for the legislature. So you have 2 bodies within the legislature. And the first body is called the House of Representatives, and the second body is called the Senate. And the Senate is based upon 2 senators that they would give to every single state, regardless of population. So population as a factor with the Senate was null and void. And the populations were only concerned with the House of Representatives, which now has 435 in it, and 100 senators, based upon 50 states having 2 senators. So that they gave them co-equal power. And so in other words, there was no, ability, hopefully, that one would usurp power from the other. And they recognized that that was what's known as a bicameral legislature. It's one of a kind. The United States was the first one to ever have such a bicameral legislature. And then that was working out pretty well. I mean, it had some problems. And of course, over time, the Civil War, and of course, the First World War, Second World War. And by the 1960s, there was a progressive movement to eliminate bicameralism at the state level. Now, what happened when the states grew up, basically, when they were formed, they were broken down into counties. So it's like the United States. The United States has 50 states as a union. Those are the subset of the United States, but then of a state, the subset is the basic governmental unit called the county, and that's called the little federal model. So up until 1964, everybody grew up with the little federal model, meaning that every county, just like a state, would have a senator elected by the county itself. And so you had a sovereign senator elected to each county in every state. And so that made up the Senate for every state. And of course, when that happened, you had the power balance back, and you had the power balance, and that it was appropriate that senators were representing sovereign bodies called counties, and members of the House of Representatives, or the Assembly in our case, was representing the people and the will of the people. So until 1964, that was working very well, but progressive court called the Warren Court out of California, he's out of California, or Warren, came up with a case that I think it was out of Georgia, that they ruled that senators would ultimately become actually representing people. And no longer would they represent counties, but would represent districts based upon population. So what you had there was what the founding fathers did not want, by way of the Connecticut Compromise in 1789, and they eliminated bicameralism and gave senators, even though they kept the Senate, they still gave senators representation by people and not by a county. And now what that means out here in California, and I think it means the same thing for your state, is that we have 58 counties. And when you take a look at the breakdown of all the counties in California, you have some very highly densely populated counties of about 20 million. And then most of the rural area of California, about 90% of the landmass, is another 20 million. So there's a problem in terms of how we're represented in the rural areas, even though we have the same population. And that is because of population density. And so what happens is that we have 40 senators, and every senator is assigned a district. And it so happens that 33 of the senators are in and around either the Los Angeles area or San Francisco or Sacramento. And the rest of the areas of 20 million people are underserved because you only have 7 in the whole, about 85 to 90% of the landmass of California. We have one district, the district number 1, Senator Dolly, has 11 counties that he functions around representing the people. Now, mind you, the senator was supposed to originally represent the interest of the sovereigns in the county. Each and every county had that. So in other words, he represented the interest of the sheriff, he represented the interest of the treasurers, of the county supervisors, and so on, but not the interest of all the people. Excuse me. And that's a problem, because now senators are relegated to representing just people in a very limited area. And you know that causes underrepresentation to the counties, which are resource rich. And of course, the resources are squeezed off to the urbanized areas. And that's become a real problem out here in California. It's become a problem all throughout the nation, because all of your power base, including most of your senators, which are representing people, and of course the assembly members or House of Representatives, are all representing people in the densely urbanized areas. That was a problem that was foreseen even in 1964, but no one believed it. And now it's manifested itself by 2021 into some major underrepresented areas all throughout the United States, and including why you have such a densely populated area in Chicago, and the other areas of Illinois are totally underrepresented, especially in the Senate. So there's no control, there's no power sharing that's equitable between the Senate and your House of Representatives. And that's the problem throughout the United States. And that's one of the disparities that goes on, where rural areas are underrepresented. So that's Reynolds versus Sims.
Yeah, as an excellent explanation of what's going on there. And that's what we find in Illinois. And I think as a result of this decision back in the middle 60s, it's forced us into a democracy that the Constitution in Article
That's
4,
correct.
Section 4 does not give us. It gives us a constitutional republic. And many others believe that this Reynolds versus Sims decision took that away from us. It forced us into a democracy. On a personal note, I represent all or part of 7 counties, my counterpart about 5 counties. Our state senator that we share is responsible for those 11 or 12 counties.
Right.
Whereas we have a situation like you were referring to in California, in Chicago, approximately 2/3 of our legislators come from one county and parts of the surrounding counties. Granted, that's where the population is, but it's kind of taken away this bicameral situation that you talk about, and it's kind of put us into almost a one-party unicameral state. And I don't believe that's what the founding fathers wanted to do.
No, they did not want that, and they explicitly did not want that. But that's what we're stuck with now. And it's true, we now have a democracy in every one of the states where we were never designed for democracy. And Article 4, Section 4 says that it's a requirement of the federal government and the state government to provide a Republican form of government, not a democracy. And they were very, very clear about that. And that's one of the reasons why the first element of Article 4, Section 4 is to provide for a Republican form of government. Even before invasion and even before safety, they knew that if you did not have a Republican form of government and you had a democracy, you probably had a dictatorship, so you weren't free from invasion and you weren't free from domestic violence. That's the logic the founding fathers used.
Right. And I think the downside to that is we have this large population center in our respective states that is creating and adopting and forcing policy on the rest of the state, kind of a one size fits all. They have problems in these urban areas, and they're trying to force these solutions on the rural areas that don't have those problems. It's a completely different situation in the urban versus the rural, different cultures, different population, different needs. Everything's different to some extent.
Well, you have the urbanized areas fundamentally terrorizing the rural areas. In the rural areas, even though they have a lot of land to them, they still have the same population.
Right.
So you get half of the population that's basically being tyrannized by the urbanized areas, condensed population zones.
Right.
And that's the biggest problem right there. That's why we've slipped into a democracy, which the founding fathers never wanted. The word democracy is not mentioned in the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, or the Declaration of Independence. They had an abhorrent attitude towards democracy because they knew that it would slip into chaos and ultimately destroy the state.
Right. Let's bring Liz in on this conversation a little bit.
I was about to interject myself there. I was going to say it's two-pronged because not only is it forcing a different financial model, which is subsidized living is in your urbanized areas. That's a predominant financing methodology for them. So they're always going to the federal government for funding to cover those subsidized requirements. But you have also got the underrepresentation of the economic health of the counties that are in the rural and suburban areas, where most people are working and generating their own income, free economy. But all of our for instance, in California, our agricultural, forestries, fisheries, and the different industry areas have been underserved in representation because the state senators don't have enough voice to be able to represent the economic health and needs of those counties that they represent.
Right.
So you see the decline of our economy is declining because there is the opportunity to take away the what I would call the financial wherewithal for people to keep the businesses going through regulation. So there's all of these other plans like the air quality control, the water distribution. It's all regulated and controlled through people that don't use those resources. They're not the ones using the water. They're not the ones making the living by the resources that are naturally part of the state. So there really is an intentional, I believe it's intentional, way to be able to destroy the economy of a state. And by doing that, then there's an opportunity for a hostile takeover. So we've seen that in New York. New York has really decimated their dairy industry, which was a significant portion of the economy in New York. We've done that here too. The dairy industry is being harmed, and so is all of our farming. So a lot of our land gets put into land banks, and then the water is sold because it's not being used by the farmers. It's being sold, and there's two different types of water. I won't get into all of that, but it's being taken advantage of. So there's lots of rigged ways that they're taking advantage of these senators not being able to represent the rural part of the state.
Yeah, and that's interesting, the things that you say about that. And I would have to say that California is probably taking the lead on some of this regulation, how they're regulating these agricultural areas and agriculture in general. You know, the Midwest has been the recipient of a lot of those dairy farms have moved into the Midwest, into Illinois and surrounding states, just because of the environment there in California has forced them to go to other locations. And so we see that happening. And I think some of those regulations and those environmental things are happening here a little bit slower maybe than they are in California. Yeah, Liz, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I've heard that your economy is further advanced in the decline than California, and we're really in bad shape.
Exactly. So you mentioned you're a senator in your respective county. Did I hear that right?
Yes. Yeah. I'm a senator for Contra Costa.
Okay, and so there's a little bit of a process here, right? We want to try to organize counties. You set up kind of a, well, what should I say? Is it a shadow type government? What kind of a government are you, or a government in waiting? What are you trying to establish there in this process?
New California state needs to prepare itself for the day it becomes a new state. So in order to do that, we have to be able to demonstrate that we can govern ourselves, that it's not suddenly we are given statehood and then there's no infrastructure for statehood. There needs to be planning and foresight into preparation for the new state to be able to operate and migrate into taking over control over their boundaries or their borders that are going to be called New California. So we have prepared a bicameral legislature. We have senators and assembly people, and we are going against the type of government that they've established with the Reynolds versus Sims. And instead, we're doing one senator for each county, 2 assembly members for each county. And that's the initial design. It may be tweaked and refined as we become more advanced in our statehood, but that is so that we can establish ourselves as having sovereign counties, same as a state. A state has 2 senators representing their economic and best interests, and we need a senator in our county representing our economic and best interests, as well as our people. So the assembly people represent the people. And as we build this, we've also written resolutions. We can't write bills, of course, but we've written resolutions to indicate the type of government that we intend to be, which is an originalist constitutional government, going back to the full intent of releasing people to have freedoms, the freedoms that God gave them and written in our Bill of Rights. So the founding documents of our country are guiding the direction of how our government is being established, and we intend to establish ourselves to provide for the representation as being maintained by the people. So we will bring back to the people the voice of we the people. And you see my sign behind me, we the people, as really that's the direction that we all need to be doing. And because this Reynolds versus Sims didn't just establish this disparity of government in California, it did it across the United States.
Yeah. So you're building out this structure as we move forward. You're doing the resolution saying this is kind of like the way we'd like to be guided. You've declared independence. You're reading and writing grievances throughout the state and every county. You've had multiple constitutional conventions, and you're just kind of trying to build this out slowly by surely so that when you do gain statehood, you're ready to go.
Right. There will come a point in time where there will be real elections for the people that be in the new California state government. But right now we are the placeholders. We are doing the work to develop the structure, develop the government, and put the foundation in place so that it's not struggling to try and establish itself in a time of crises. So we have been putting that together. Plus our county committees are really, I call them marketing arm of New California. And that's to get the people prepared to know There's a need for a new California because we need to take back our control over our government. Our government no longer listens to us, and we have the whole exposure of that. I think as we see the voting machines that we've been using have been selecting our candidates for us. They're really not allowing us to vote. We get to see that the government has a deaf ear to the people. So we go and petition the government for a redress of grievances, and they basically let us go through the process and close the door and vote however they want to. So we've lost control of our government, and we need to establish it back. So New California has established itself to take back the control and give it back to the people.
Yeah, excellent. So they can find you, Liz, the website where they can find more about New California. What is that address on the website?
It is newcaliforniastate.com. That's newcaliforniastate.com. And we have a second website, which is NCS, Nancy, Charlie, Sam, 51. And that's .com, ncs51.com. And we also have a toll-free number, 877-828-2753, 877-828-2753, and that they can get in touch with us at any time.
Excellent.
Our 8th Constitutional Convention is coming up actually this month, and we're going to have Sidney Powell, we'll have Sheriff Joe Arpaio. We're going to have a representative from the Trump campaign for 2020. That's going to be Tana Gertz, one of the senior advisors to the campaign, as well as some local heroes. We have citizens that are standing up to the mandates and not allowing themselves to be controlled. And there is a way to be able to do that. So we're also rolling out methods to be able to teach people how to be able to say, no, I will not comply, and do it without getting themselves mad and screaming and yelling and getting thrown, into jail or something, or arrested. But how to be able to do it, the process is in the Constitution. And so we're following that structure to be able to take back our authority that we were given by our Bill of Rights.
Excellent. And I know you've had some great speakers in the past at your constitutional conventions. Dinesh D'Souza and some others were out there last fall. And so
we had Candace Owens.
Candace Owens and Mike Huckabee.
Yeah. And to you guys' credit, I think you guys do have one thing kind of maybe in your favor is a recall process for your governor, and the governor's being recalled, or at least the process.
Yay!
Yeah.
Well, that's that's kind of a catch as catch can. We're kind of happy that there's a recall going on, but the problem is he still has executive powers, so he can actually put the recall off until as long as he wants to, and call the election when he wants to. So we're fighting with that. And the other thing too is that we filed a lawsuit against Gavin Newsom and also against our Secretary of State Alex Padilla. And in that lawsuit, we discovered, and of course part of this is our own activities. We've been going out now and had 28 citizens committee hearings all up and down the state of California, and the first 4 were regarding the election. And the election, the integrity, basically, we started this in December. We had 4 hearings in December, and it was very enlightening. We could tell right away when we started taking the testimony that there was a great deal of improprieties that were existing. And then, so we decided to file suit when we found out even more information as we were digging around, that when Gavin Newsom decided that he was going to call in 22 million mail-in ballots, and just on his executive order them up for everybody to get in the mail. He was actually sued by 2 assembly members out here, and the judge found in favor of them that he said that he had acted unconstitutionally. Well, when we went through the hearings, we discovered also by a whistleblower who came forward and said that the ballots were improperly marked, that they were printed in China. And so we did further explanation. We found out, sure enough, there were 2 statutes that are statutory statutes that have to be on the ballots, and all the ballots that were brought in lacked either one or the other of the statutes. And so it says very, very clearly in statutory law of California, the elections code, that if these ballots do not have this language on them, then you cannot cast or count the ballot. So that prompted our lawsuit, and right now we're very much engaged with that as we speak. So if in fact this lawsuit prevails, which I think we will, you're going to see that what's going to happen is that the 55 electoral votes from California are going to be decertified, which means that 55 electoral ballots will be taken away from Joe Biden. And we think that may happen in the next 3 months.
Interesting stuff. Guys, as we kind of close this out, Paul, any closing comments? And then Liz, will go to you for a closing comment. And then I've just got a final call to action I want to let our people in Illinois know about. Paul, any closing comments?
Well, you guys keep up the good work out there. You've got some really good people out there working on this project. And we're trying to keep ourselves on the right and narrow path as it is. But we know that ultimately we're going to become a new state. And we know that ultimately you guys, you're going to be you're following pretty much the same design of Article 4, Section 3. You just have to stay with that, and you're going to become a new state. And it's going to be interesting. Is it going to be 51 for you or 52? We claim 51. So anyway, we'll see what happens. But the best of luck to everybody. And like Liz says, if you need to get a hold of us at any time, we're more than happy to be available to anybody in the new Illinois movement.
Excellent. Thank you. Liz, any closing comments or thoughts or suggestions for us here in Illinois?
I do want to say that Paul has his radio broadcast on a21r.com each morning from 6 o'clock until 9. And really everything you need to know, Illinois, any state, he will be describing to you why we're doing what we're doing, how we're progressing, and it will give you a good understanding and background about a new state development. But one of the things, it's a process. And so it only stops because you stop. So you can't stop. You just keep on marching forward, no matter what obstacle comes against you. You just keep marching forward, and God will reveal to you where the path is to go. So keep up the enthusiasm, build momentum with people understanding there is not another solution. No rescue is on the way. Just there isn't another choice. So the choice is to take back your constitutional protection and take your rights and not give them away. Your freedoms are yours. If you give them away, shame on you. Hold on to them and use the Constitution. And if you do the grievances, yes, you do the grievances too, Brad?
Yes, they're into number 4, number 5. The Declaration of Independence was done last October. And we're into, I think, New Illinois is up to grievance number 5 now.
Okay, we do ours on a Tuesday. In fact, we just finished our grievances today. Yeah, we do them every Tuesday, and that allows everybody to get involved. And we televise it. Use your opportunities in social media, your website. Get the word out. Market yourself with every venue that you have available, because people are looking for how to be able to stop this hostile takeover. And it really is. It's a challenge, but it's one that we cannot allow to win. It cannot win. We can't let it win. So New California, New Illinois, we're part of the solution, and you need to be part of if you're not a part of New Illinois, please join, find a way to plug in, take your time, your talents, your gifts, and your energy, your resources, and fight and be as mad as hell as what's going on, because it can't continue. All right, that's my little speech.
Thank you guys for that, and great words, great insight, great. It's all good. And so, for those of us in Illinois, the New Illinois website is newillinoisstate.org is the best place to go. Newillinoisstate.org. You can find them on Facebook also. And I'm going to have my Mr. Producer I want him to share a screen with us. We're going to put a call to action out to our folks here in Illinois. Hopefully, we can make the switch to the screen. And I'm just encouraging our people in Illinois to file a witness slip for this committee hearing that we're going to have tomorrow to have this resolution HR 102 heard. And if that works, we'll be able to pull that up. If you've not been able to do a witness slip in the past, we're going to kind of show you what that looks like. Anything that you want to know about going on in your Illinois General Assembly is you just go to ilga.gov. And I see it there. This is fairly simple. Just fill in the blanks, name, address, and it's just going to ask you for your position, whether you're an opponent, pro-opponent, just click that. Record of appearance only. If you want to file a written record, you can do that by basically checking that box and emailing the chairman or chairwoman of the committee, things like that. And then just click at the bottom. I'm going to change screens here to make sure I'm looking at the right thing. I'm telling you right. So at the very lower left, you just agree to the terms. And then on the lower right, you just create the slip. It's fairly simple, fairly straightforward. And then that will put you into the record. I think as of a little while ago, we're something over 200 proponents, just a handful of opponents. I hope I said that right. Over 200 proponents and just a handful of opponents. We'd love to have you weigh in on that. Again, you can reach out to me at rephalbrook.com or bradhalbrook.com. Again, I really want to show appreciation to Liz and Paul for joining with us this afternoon. Leave us all comments. I know we've got a few questions. We'll try to follow up. If we weren't able to answer your questions here today on this call and some of the narrative, I'll do my level best to follow up with you all. And again, thank you, Paul. Thank you, Liz, for being with us this afternoon. It's been great insight, great words of wisdom, and great encouragement. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a nice afternoon.
Thank you.